You're listening to episode 173 with Dr. Korie Leigh. What does grief feel like? Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. I'm so happy that you're here today. I am Katie. I am your certified child life specialist, your friendly neighborhood certified child life specialist, and the host and CEO of Child Life on Call. And we're so grateful that you're here. And I know you're not going to want to miss this very quicker than normal episode, but it's because we wanted to deliver to you so much packed in a short amount of time. We know that you're busy. So we're talking today with Dr. Korie Leigh. She is a certified child life specialist, but she has also gone on to have so much academic success and is a PhD in thanatology, which means she has really devoted her academic and life and career to studying death, grief, and bereavement. And she has recently published a book called What Does Grief Feel Like? And it's such a good question. Like, we want to know what grief feels like, but we know as adults it's so different and it's so muddied for everybody. So what does grief feel like to a child? And how can we use bibliotherapy and books like hers to really navigate those conversations? So I'm not going to talk anymore. Let's get started with our conversation. I'm so glad you're here. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners. Why don't you just start off by introducing us to who Dr. Korie Leigh is, a little bit about where you live, your background, and just let our listeners know who you are. That would be great.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me on. So I'm Dr. Korie Leigh. It's still kind of an interesting thing when I introduce myself as doctor. I have been a child life specialist for 18 years. I am also a certified thanatologist. And for your listeners that don't know what that is, thanatology is the interdisciplinary study of death, dying, grief, and bereavement. So I have a specialty in pediatrics, pediatric hospice, and palliative care and grief and loss. And I also hold a doctorate in transpersonal psychology.
Oh my goodness. You are so well equipped with so many wonderful things that can really help families in their hardest of times. And, I think one of the things you wrote to me, Korie, when we started talking was that grief is messy. And I'm sure you get into the thick of it with families. And so first and foremost, I'm just grateful for your work. It's not like one of those things where you just drive home at the end of the day and you're like, oh, I can just forget that happened. And it probably stays with you a lot. So there's probably a lot of personal things that you have to go through. So thank you so much for what you do. What originally drove you to have an interest in this type of work?
Yeah. So, I started out as a child life specialist when I was 22 years old. So, I graduated with my bachelor's and jumped right into working in two ICUs, a cardiac ICU and a medical surgical ICU. And needless to say, both of those settings, I was exposed to a tremendous amount of death my first week on the job. And while on the one hand, my background as a child life specialist absolutely prepared me, at the time, there wasn't even a course required on death and grief. So I felt ill equipped to really be providing these families with the kind of support that I knew that I could. And so that is what propelled me to go back to school, and to dive more deeply into how do I support children and families who are facing the insurmountable pain of the loss of their child. The kind of
Mm.
person that I am is when I experience a challenge, I'm an information based coper. So I move towards the stressor. I want to understand it. And that is what happened in my lived experience as a child life specialist.
That's such an important part. I too, like from the beginning, the first death of a family that I supported to the most recent, there's so much growth that happens there. Um, and there's still times where I am like, am I equipped to do this? And I wonder if just as humans, if that ever goes away, or do you walk into I mean, you're so well prepared now, but does that ever come up for you that like, oh my gosh, am I doing and saying the right thing? Does that ever go away?
Oh, it never goes away. I think if it does go away, there should be a lot of inquiry and reflection as to if it's still the right fit.
Mm.
I think in my years of experience and my training, I'm also a university professor, so I teach courses on death and grief. All of these academic degrees and experiences have just helped me become more comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Mm. Oh,
And
yeah.
and at the end of the day, I ask myself repeatedly, was that the best way that I could have framed that? Is
Yeah.
there a better way? If I could do it again, maybe I would have said it this way or that way. And this book is really the culmination of those experiences that I had with families.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So it's an exciting day today. Do you want to tell us what launches today?
Yeah. So my very first book, titled What Does Grief Feel Like, launches into the world today.
Yay,
This
congratulations.
Thank you so much. It happened really, really quickly on one hand, and on the other, this has been a years long process. I had thought about writing a book for about 5 years, and in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, I guess that the stars aligned so that I had the space to just sit down and write it. So I wrote the manuscript in August of 2020, and it is just today launched into the world. So the traditional publishing of a book is a very long process, and I'm so grateful to see it in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's exciting is that we're going to have you come on actually to the Child Life Circle in a little bit and talk about that whole publishing process, hopefully, and just learn from you. But this book is really it's geared towards kids. And I think we know when we're writing a children's book that we're also writing it for parents, as talking points and communication topics that they can bring up. What is your book like? Kind of walk us through some of the things that you teach both kids and families without giving away the whole thing. Of course, that nothing's going to replace us wanting to go and buy and look at your book and have it as a resource for ourselves. But talk to us a little bit about what's in your book.
Yeah, so What Does Grief Feel Like is written to be used as a psychotherapeutic tool. And what that means is that the book is written both to be read to and with a child, but also for the adult reading it with the child to ask questions to help the child better understand their experience. And when I was creating this book, I really thought about that parental or caregiver, the adult experience. So often, parents are asking me questions. What do I say? How do I frame this? How do I ask these questions of my child. And so embedded into the book, every few pages are direct, open-ended questions that the reader can ask the child and answer together. The very first page opens with concrete language: someone that I love has died. And the question to pair with that is, has someone you loved died? What was their name? Who were they? And the story continues in that kind of a narrative. It's a very supportive book. It's very open-ended. It's written specifically for children under the age of 8. But I'll also say that I've had many pre-readers, people that don't have children or even work with children, have read it, and they've come back with the feedback that this has helped them in their grief. And on a personal note, in August of 2020, I was grieving a very profound loss, and it was the 1-year anniversary of that loss. And as I reflected on my own grief process, I had really wished that someone could just sit with me and ask me really simple questions to help me better understand what was my grieving experience like for me. And that was another aspect that I really tried to include in the book. And in the back of the book, there is a caregiver guide, and that guide is simple, concrete information. It's not too many pages, but it provides enough information so that parents, teachers, school counselors can understand what grief looks like through a child's eyes, what behaviors are common, and different techniques and strategies to help children cope with their grief.
How beautiful. What a gift. That was going to be my next question is, who can read this book with kids? And you answered it, both parents, caregivers, trusted adults in kids' lives. Is there a good time? I mean, I know for my family, our reading book time really comes at the end of the day, which kind of coincides with our fears about sleep and being alone in our room and darkness. And sometimes my son will ask, just the heaviest questions at night. And sometimes they mean a lot and sometimes they don't mean anything at all. What is your recommendation for when is a good time to read this book? And is this something we read before a loved one dies or after someone dies? What's the time and the place to read this?
Yeah. So one thing that I'll say about this book, and really any book out there about grief, there is no perfect book. And these kind of conversations take place over time. And so on the one hand, this book is written to address the death of a person. And so, the first page opens with someone that I love died. So it is written and designed to be read after a child understands that a death has happened. And there are a few pages in the back of the book that help parents find the language for talking with children about death. But a part of this book that I think is really powerful is the impact that it can have if used in a psychotherapeutic way. So ideally, the book can be used and read with a child, and then it can be paired with an activity to help really integrate what's been learned and understood through the book. There are some pages in the book that talk about how grief is felt in the body, how it feels as a color, as a shape, as a size. And so pairing that with some art activities to help the child really be able to express what their grief feels like. So it can happen in the middle of the day, in a school setting, in a group setting. It can certainly happen at the end of the night as a place, as you had stated, those are when the big questions come up. And then maybe the activity or some of the breathing exercises that are offered can be paired with that the next day or as a continuation, because these conversations will continue throughout a child's lifetime.
Oh, that's such a good tool to use. It's true because, we say conversations and that doesn't always just mean talking and verbal. Sometimes those conversations continue through art, continue through play, continue with those nonverbal parts. And I think that's beautiful advice. Where can people go order this book? You said it's written for kids who are under 8. Does that mean that we shouldn't read it to older kids, or what's kind of your thought about the best place for parents to go get it and when to start reading it?
Yeah. So developmentally, cognitively speaking, I wrote the text for pre-operational and early concrete learners, so under the age of 8. However, I have had school age kids and tweens read it and find it really, really helpful. So I
Right.
think I always just lean back on parents know their kids and teens the best. If you read this book and you're like, my kid's going to look at this and think this is for a baby, maybe
Mhm.
not.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I've tried and found a lot of success with, particularly with books like this, is asking older kids, hey, can you take a look at this and let me know what you think?
Yeah.
Like, how would you change this? Or when you were a younger kid, would you have liked this? So really getting their feedback and their input can also be a way of exposing them to the book without sitting down and reading it with them and to them. That being said, you can purchase this book anywhere where books are purchased. It is published with Free Spirit Publications, which is the largest publisher of social emotional books in the country. So pretty much every school district in the country has Free Spirit books. So you can order it directly from the publisher. And I do have a 20% off code that I can provide to you. So if you order it from the publisher, you get that 20% off. If you prefer to, order it from a place like Bookshop, which is my preference, because when you make an account with Bookshop, you can actually choose your local indie bookstore, and proceeds from all of the books in Bookshop go directly to your indie bookstore. And I do
Wow.
have a link for that, but you can order it on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. It's available in the United Kingdom. It's available in Europe and Australia. You can really just type in, what does grief feel like book, Korie Leigh, and you decide where you want to purchase it from.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. Your heart, your soul, your wisdom has all gone into this book. And what a beautiful, tangible tool that you've given to so many families. So thank you so much, Dr. Korie Leigh, for being here on the podcast, sharing this with families. And I think I want to talk a little bit. I know what the book looks like, the cover, the illustrations. Um, you look at it and you feel calm. You look at it and you see the illustrations, and they're just beautiful. So congratulations on all that you've done. And we're so grateful to now have this resource as professionals and as parents who have a lot of, I know sometimes I get that like, uh-oh feeling in my belly when I have to talk about a complex topic with my kids. And so a tool like this just makes it so much easier. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for allowing me to come and talk with your listeners. And if anyone reads the book and you have feedback, or I would just love to know how families are using it, how professionals are using it. So please do share.
Awesome. And then if we can find you on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, where's the other great place to find other resources that you create?
Yeah, so I am on all of those: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and my handle is at Dr. Korie Leigh. And I do have a website, which is KorieLeighPhD.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to read the book.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to Child Life on Call. If you head to our website, childlifeoncall.com, you're going to find all sorts of stuff there for parents, professionals, healthcare providers, child life specialists, no matter who you are. Actually, when you just go to our homepage, it'll help you direct to exactly where you need to go. On that, you'll find opportunities and PDUs for child life specialists. Parents, we've got a starter kit for you. And clinicians, we even have a clinician course, which teaches you how to be a confident and capable caregiver in pediatrics. We're so grateful that you're here. Please DM us on Instagram. And like I mentioned, when you rate and review this podcast, it helps other families be able to find us. So let's keep doing that. And I will see you again here next week.